Hey guys, Darren Kelly, coach of Wiseish Pods, and welcome back to another team review post round 9. We are now flying through the rounds. I don't know if it's just me or it just seems like the season is flying by at the moment. Only having 3 days in between, it is starting to become a bit draining if you ask me, just with only 3 days in between. But we truck on, we keep moving on. But what a weird round we had. I think there was a big distribution between people who went well this week, where they dodged a fair few bullets, and there was quite a few people that did quite poorly and they just constantly just copped it. And I was sort of middle ground. I didn't hit par, so I just got the 2040, so not the greatest. So the round rank of 29k roughly dropped back about 600 1600 spots. So first drop back in a little while, but ultimately it was really just a few slags. Well, I shouldn't say slags, but a few stragglers here and there. Husway is the obvious one that really hurt with him being subbed at half time. Was okay, 30 points at half time. I was like, oh yeah, he can hit a 60, 70 from here. And I thought he was on for a pretty decent day with Newcomb particularly being tagged. I was like, oh, Newcomb's sort of out of the equation. It's either Warple or he's going to get a fair bit of the ball. But he just looked slow, sluggish, really just didn't work hard for the ball at all. So I can understand why Hawks made the switch to trade him out. Oh, sorry, not trade him out, to sub him out. And I'd be quite surprised if he makes the trip to Darwin this weekend. So he's probably a big trade out target for me. Decent amount of money on his head. Luckily, didn't lose any money, but realistically, has been a waste of a trade. 2 trades even. Trading him in only 2 weeks ago. Got the nice 87 last week, but yeah, 30 definitely hurt my score this week. Just say it would have an extra 40 points in my field, would have put me in a pretty decent position to hold rank. So that's annoying. Also, Lindsay, I keep trusting this guy and he just keeps letting me down for the last couple of weeks. So here's another one I am probably looking at getting rid of. It's just so late in the season now that we shouldn't be copying these 44s. We should have better rookies, or we shouldn't have many rookies on field at all. So things haven't panned out as the way that I want them to be, but that's just fantasy sometimes. Probably don't have the luxury with some rookies at the stage in the season. But besides that, a few premiums didn't perform very well. Obviously, Dacos on the Thursday night that got us off to a pretty bad shocker, the 60-67, and then same game Ned Long. That was pretty disappointing, especially with all the rested players that they had. So Thursday night was pretty boring, and yeah, didn't get me off to the best weekend. And it pretty much didn't improve from there. Honestly, it was a struggle to watch a lot of games this weekend, just because I knew my team was in a pretty poor position, and it just seemed like every game was something that wasn't performing well. So, but we're here now at the end of it, and it wasn't as bad as I initially thought it would be. I think that what the saving grace was for my team particularly is that the Jaden Short laid out. That was a huge laid out 11 minutes before the game. I was lucky enough to catch it, being being part of a few group chats. Yeah, the chat was going off, and yeah, obviously caught it on my phone and was able to luckily put Trainer on instead, because I was looping Reed, which speaking of him, he is a god at the moment. He will not be leaving my team for a little while, but I'm sure he will backfire at some stage. But yeah, that obviously saved me a huge amount of points, and a lot of people did cop a couple donuts. If not, a lot of people relied on Finn O'Sullivan. So at 29 points there, I probably saved about 40 points there. So ultimately, I'm okay with how my team performed. So +3 and -3. I'm going to have to give the +3 to Baz. He was by far the best player in my team and for everyone else. And I just keep disrespecting this man. Like, for how well he's gone this season, I don't think I've captained him once. Uh, I think there was only one time I captained him, and I don't think he did particularly well. So, uh, yeah, I need to start trusting him a bit more. Just with how well he's going, he's just putting himself a part of that category where I have sort of like the Dawsons and the Dunkleys at the moment, where they just have so many elements to the game, where it's tackling, it's marking, all the disposals. He can hit the scoreboard. He is just elite at the moment. His running capacity is amazing as well. Good time on ground. So, yeah, I think we need to trust him a little bit more with my captain. So, stay tuned for him to be in there a bit more. 119 for the season is unreal. And I think he's like 5 points clear of the next best, which is Lockie Whitfield, which is just insane to think that how cheap we paid for him and how good of he's become. He's going to be going up over 500k as early as next week. So that is just unreal. Up against Port Adelaide, again, tough matchup, but he just doesn't matter. Doesn't care. He just gets it done. So I'll be considering him for captains. I think he plays early in the round as well. So love him as a +3. -3 has to go to Huswaite. That 30 really, really hurt me. So yeah, especially because he's so unique. That just is so poor. So yeah, unfortunate there. But it is what it is. That's fantasy sometimes. VCCs, obviously I went with the day cost as the 67 on the Thursday night. Didn't pan out the way I wanted. My number one captain spot is definitely become cursed again, so we'll see how that pans out coming in a couple of weeks. I did have Dunkley as my number 4, I think, behind the likes of Sheasel, but I just felt like Dunkley was on for a better game. Smaller ground, bit more chance of tackles, and that's sort of what proved to be the right decision. Both of them were very, very close all game. I think they were both on 91 points at three-quarter time. Then Dunkley just had a bit better of a last quarter, which wasn't amazing. It was a 20-point or 21-point quarter, whatever it was, where Sheasel just didn't really get amongst it with a 12-point quarter. So happy with a 111, but definitely left a few points on the table if I went a few other players, like a Max Gorn or a Cherry, but either way, it's not a huge amount of points. So that is the captain options. A quick review of my trades. Overall, pretty happy with them. Obviously, happy to jump off these two now. They're both losing a huge amount of coin, and ultimately gained about 40 points on Saligo, and then obviously got on Boxall, who I am worried about. I feel like it might be a bit of a waste of a trade because he could potentially be dropped very shortly just with a poor performance. And let him play, man. 49% is just ridiculous. It just seemed like every time I looked at him, he was on the bench. So fingers crossed he can bump that up again this week and heading into his buy and can continue to get generate cash. Because yeah, with a few more of these 39s, his cash generation is going to drop very quickly and become a bit of a problem child. So yeah, but I guess it's a lot better than what a lot of other people did when they traded in Lewis Hayes. Really unfortunate news for him that he has now ruptured an ACL. Was looking good too. Like he was on for a pretty decent game, 67% time on ground, so that would have been a bit higher. Playing that accountable key back, and that's probably what led to Zach Reed scoring a lot of points as well. Just freed him up, didn't allow him to play accountable, and he was just able to play off halfback. And yeah, that was awesome to see. So, a bit disappointing, but we'll see who sort of replaces him. But ultimately now he is a dead rookie, so that is an unfortunate trade, and is going to be a bit of a troubled one to jump off of. So, yeah, unfortunate for those owners that did jump on. But yeah, ultimately happy with my trades. But I guess the glaring obviously one is I was tossing up between Dunkley, Merritt, and Tom Green, and obviously Tom Green was the one that I thought we should have jumped on at the cheapest price, with him going a massive, I think 134 or something like that, something ridiculous, 133. Yeah, so first time we've seen a big proper score against a natural decent opponent. So he'll be a huge target for a lot of people this week at his cheaper price at about 104, 105. So yeah, definitely don't mind him there. What else do I need to talk about? So problem areas for my team currently. So obviously, Huswaite, Lindsay are the main ones. Long's potentially going to start becoming a bit of a problem shortly, but obviously, I think the next two are okay. I just got to be careful if he starts to become a bit of a sub risk. You know, he didn't look great in that game, particularly only the 12 disposals, and he got moved out of the CBA mix in the final quarter, and they threw Perryman in there, so that does concern me slightly. So fingers crossed he does stay within the team and isn't subbed out, because that would ultimately kill his scoring potential, because his cash generation is pretty much up now with a 69 at his break even. So I think I'll be holding him for a couple more weeks. You know, North Melbourne, and then hopefully he lasts to the Melbourne matchup, and then I can trade him at his buy. But we'll see how that sort of pans out at this stage. The other mid-price end, Marek's just ticking along. Awesome to have him. Got a great matchup this weekend, so expecting another very decent score. Great time on ground, 90% nearly is amazing. And I think next three matchups, Crows actually looking like a pretty decent matchup now for halfbackers. So we saw what Connor Rosie did particularly against the Crows on the weekend with 122. So now I'm expecting to hold him for a little bit longer, and fingers crossed again. Hopefully he can last until around 15. But wait and see on that one. But everyone else is going okay. Obviously, we need to address a few more rookies. I've got the 3 rookies in the back line at the moment with Trainer, Bice, and Reed. Well, they're scoring okay. I think a lot of people will be trading Bice out this week. Obviously, he had his first price drop with 4K, so a lot of people will just jump off him at that price tag. I'm caught in two minds because, yes, he's got a huge amount of money on the head, but I can do the trades that I'm looking at without him. So I'm just thinking, for points on ground purposes, I'm probably going to take a little bit of a hit from cash generation point of view, but for points on ground, I think I'm better off holding him, particularly for these 3 matchups coming up. So I'm in the camp is if you're holding him this week, you're holding him until he's buy. If you're trading him, then just don't look back because it could hurt you, and he could go quite big in these next couple, as we've seen previously. So fingers crossed he can get up to there for me. But quickly, a player-by-player review. As I said, Sheasel was on track for a very, very nice score with a 91 at 3/4 time. Just had a poor last quarter. Wangani Malera started on like a house on fire with a 44-point quarter at the start and just sort of ticked along to his 108. So happy to see him there. Still just ticking along, not hitting the ceilings like we sort of expect, but he's just a super chill 100-ton guy every single week, no matter who he's placing up against. Up against the Eagles this week should be a very nice matchup as well. We'll talk about his teammate in a second. Roberts just ticking along at that 90s area, just, yeah, super consistent. Some decent matchups coming as well, as I said, for Sydney, so he definitely stays. Trainer, I do have concerns, but of the rookies that I have, he's definitely one of the best ones to be putting on field. Just look how consistent he's been when he hasn't been subbed or just didn't have that weird poor game against Port Adelaide. Just been a super consistent guy, averaging about 65, if not 70, in without those poor scores. So he'll be on my field this week more than likely. Dawson got tagged, so that's unfortunate there. But that was by Bergman, my old boy Bergman, and he actually scored well, which was which hurt me to see. You know, he's cursing my team even though he's no longer there. So, good for him. You know, I always thought he could score well. And could it be a bit of a role change? I know from a few Port Adelaide supporters that obviously he's out of contract, so he's pushing for a bit of a contract extension with Port Adelaide. But I think with these terms and conditions, he sort of wants to play a bit more midfield, so they're letting him run through there. So I am intrigued, but also I'm not ready to jump back on and be hurt again. So big watch on Bergman if he's going to continue this midfield role, because he can definitely score and he's our absolute weapon in there. So yeah, he's a very cheap option there. Rosie, as I said, 122, just amazing off halfback. Just I'm so keen for him to go into my back line very shortly, because that's just going to solidify a few things back there, and I can start moving from some rookies, and that is post round 11, I believe, so just before the buys. So that's in 2 weeks' time, so fingers crossed for that. Already spoke about all the midfielders there. The Ruckman just ticking along, 113 and 116. I was surprised by Cherry with his decent score against a tougher opponent in Oscar McInerney, but he just got it done. Started slowly. I think he was like only on like 19 points at the Q1, but yeah, just ticked along from there. Got a few more tackles, plenty of disposals, and generally just worked hard to get all the disposals he could. Loves to give away a free kick, this bloke, though. Doesn't know how not to do it. So yeah, ticking along, and really didn't gain me a huge amount of points from the likes of a TDK. I think he scored like a 104 from memory. Yeah, so ultimately didn't lose too many points out to people that had him or jumped off him there. So that probably worked out a little bit. Midfield, forward line. Obviously Baz. Besides that, everyone else sort of underperformed. Besides the likes of Levi Ashcroft, but he did sort of underperform in that last quarter. I thought he was on for another big one, but just sort of calmed down in the end there. So ultimately, I'm pretty happy to still have him. He's generating a huge amount of coin and putting up very nice scores on my field. So these guys are just, there is what it is. They're fine. First sort of poor score from Rankin in a non-tagged game, I'll say. Just, yeah, ultimately poor. There was a few outliers in this, like even Horn Francis. He was on 3 points at quarter time. So he just really had a slow start, really kicked into gear following that. So good to see him recover that to a solid 90. But Rankin just sort of ticked along. Had a big third or fourth quarter, one of the two goals, and just that's what I've got him a lot of his points. So glad to see that. McRae, very disappointing. I thought he was on for going to be a decent one for captain because of the high contested game that Carlton like to run, but ultimately it just led to Steele getting a lot more points in there rather than him. So those two can flip and flop each and every week, so it's going to be a bit hard to determine, but still a very good option if you want to trade him in. Besides that, my bench is looking a bit poor. Spino Sutherland is starting to drop in coin now. Like, that's disappointing. 8.8 grand. And then I also had the two subs in Moraes and Closey, so they're both dropping in coin now, which hurts because I'm going to have to trade them out eventually, probably at their buy, and it means it's going to be harder for me to get them from their price to a premium or a mid price or such, so that's a bit unfortunate. Cleary also dropped a very stinky one at 37, so he is starting to go backwards now. If he puts up another bad one, hopefully he can bounce back this week with a decent score and continue cash generation. But yeah, not looking to trade him out just yet. But also a big watch on Jaden Short this week. Hopefully tomorrow reveals what's happening with his knee, and fingers crossed he's not a trade out, because that's sort of the last thing I need right now with being a forced trade out when I've got these other guys that need to go, and I need to start getting rookies off field ultimately. I've got too many rookies, and I need to start doing a little bit better. So fingers crossed that works. But that is how the team performed last week. Quickly reviewing what I'm looking at doing. So I'm looking at trading Husway and Lindsay, like I said off the top, and I am grabbing in Sinclair at his very cheap price. Now, the reason for grabbing him is also just, the buy scenario around 13. He'll be my midfielder for that round because I don't have the likes of Brayshaw, and I don't think I'll be getting him anytime soon with his a bit of a tougher run. So I'm looking to grab around 13 midfielder, and Sinclair can fill that role for me. Hasn't been performing amazingly. Obviously had that stinky 61, 78 not too long ago, but I think his role's pretty secure back there as a halfbacker and taking fair few kick-ins. Got a very good run to his buy, so I can really assess him through that. At a very cheap price, he could easily hit this 122 break even as soon as this week against West Coast, so I'm hoping for a bit of a pop score from him. And I just think he's a pretty secure guy as a top 6 defender for the year. I know you've got the likes of Rosie coming back into the defensive line, and then you've got the likes of Max Holmes also coming back into performance as well. So he'll be there or thereabouts in my opinion. So at that cheap price, I could go Holmes, but I just think the run for Sinclair is better, even though Max Holmes is like 30k cheaper, I think. So yeah, 30k cheaper. Did put up a very nice 118, but his scoring output has been very similar with a couple of 70s and 60s. And the run is pretty terrible with these two tough next ones, and then sort of opens up a little bit through the midfield, and then Brisbane Lions before the bye. So I think I'm okay with going with him instead, and I can look at the likes of Max Holmes in the coming weeks. But particularly I'm probably looking at the likes of Nick Martin as early as next week. He's just a C, isn't he? He's not a K. Yeah, just because 141, it's hard to ignore. Back on time on ground, so he looks back in action, and I think the Richmond matchup is just going to be a very juicy one for him. So yeah, that's probably my target for next week. If not, it'll be Merritt, but Merritt is obviously a huge different price tag at this point in time. So we'll see how that sort of plans out. So that's my trades. So I don't think that's going to change too much. I could have gone a couple of different players because I do have 40k left in the bank. Like I said, I could have gone Holmes. If I wanted to go down to a basement rookie, I could have got like a Steele as well, but I just don't think Steele is going to be a top 8 midfielder for the rest of the year. I think he's going to have a few pop games with a decent fixture coming up, and he's in some decent form over the last couple of weeks. But again, the tackles is probably not super sustainable for him because it could go to Jack McRae one week and then him another week. So he's going to be up and down. So I still recommend him, but at his cheap price. But I don't think he's going to be a keeper for the year. So there's that. But I think that's pretty much it for this video. Obviously, stay tuned for trade mode coming out Wednesday. I'll go through all the options that you should be looking at trading in, going through for some rookies this time. I did forget that last video, so I do apologize for those that did miss that one. But this is ultimately how I'm looking to structure up this week. I do have two defenders in my midfield, so looking to field those three rookies in the back line because I just do not want to field, the likes of Boxall in my midfield. So I'm just running those three instead. So down to three rookies. I guess you want to count Levi Ashcroft 4 still. So probably one more or two more than most people, which is a bit unfortunate. But yeah, we'll keep taking along. Team value is not in a bad place. 23.1 million, so not too bad. But yeah, I think that's it for this video. Yes, like I said, stay tuned for trade mode and captains later this week. But please leave a like, subscribe, do all those great things. Leave a comment in the comment section if you have any questions, or go to my Q link below. Besides that, have a good one, and I'll see you Wednesday. Cheers, guys.